What's up, everybody, and welcome to Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. Again, my name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys so much for returning each and every week to the show. Hopefully you have subscribed so that way you get every new episode each and every Tuesday. Maybe giving us a like on a social media, or maybe retweeted, or maybe giving us a good review. Hopefully you've helped out in many of those ways, and if you guys have, I really appreciate it. This week on the show, we have our guest. His name is Sean Capri. That's Sean like the Connery, Capri like the pants, as he likes to put it. He actually was one of the very first people to allow me to be on his show, which inspired me to do this show. So I can't thank Sean enough for everything he's done to help me out getting this started. And we get to hear his story growing up, which I didn't know up until we did this podcast. If you guys want to be on an episode of the show, go ahead and send me a tweet at GUG Podcast on Twitter, or at my personal Twitter, MitchPower1116. Without further ado, let's get things started with Sean Capri. I've known you, Sean, for maybe a year.
Yeah, man.
Maybe. I don't know, something like that. I was first a guest on your show, which inspired me to do this show, which I just blatantly copied your show, except for I just talk about old shit. But I didn't know about your history. We only talk about Xbox predictions and all that stuff.
I know.
So I don't know anything about you, so that's why I wanted you on the show. So, do you remember what actually got you initially interested in gaming? Was it going to a store and seeing a demo unit? Was it going to a buddy's house? Do you remember actually what got you interested in the first place?
Well, and I've been listening, and I'm like, and I know that this is the question that you like to lead off with, and I'm like, what is it, man? Like, what was the first? And the thing is that it's never going to be as interesting as, like, I lived in Japan, and I did all these things over there, and I had, like, different experience than people in America. Like, I just had if anything, it was, like, even more polar opposite to that, because, we had 4 kids in my family. Well, we still have 4 kids. My parents had 4 kids. My dad was the only one working. My mom was stay-at-home mom. So, like, there wasn't really, like, just cash coming in so that we could, like, have things like the NES. Like, that's kind of, like, that's the time period that we're talking about here. You know, I'm early 30s now, so NES
Shout out
was
to 31-year-old.
Yeah,
people.
what's happening? Yeah, 84. What's up?
86. All right. We're in our 30s.
So you're exactly like my brother, my younger brother, 86. My younger sister, 87. I'll just give you the whole rundown. You know,
Might as well. Let's go.
And so, like, 4 kids, even if we did have, like, an NES, only 1 or 2 of us could play. So I think that also played into it. Like, console gaming just wasn't really happening. And my dad was way more interested in this PC, this personal computer business that was kind of taking off at the time. So
PCs, those will never last.
But actually, I'm glad that I rambled a little bit, because I think this is really what first captured my imagination. Was my dad came home with this computer. It was like a 386. It had 12 megahertz. Like, now we're talking about 3 gigahertz, like, yeah, which are thousands of megahertz. This had 12 megahertz on it, and it had a button on it that said turbo, and it would double it to 25. Like, that was a real thing.
An overclock button.
That's what I say.
It's an overclock button.
That's so funny. I don't want to get too loud on you guys here with my laughing. But so my dad comes home and he installed it. He had a friend that lived across the street who worked at, like, the local telecom company. So he was an IT genius, and he would come over and he would always help us out and install things. And everything was DOS based at the time. We weren't even dealing with, not even like Windows 3.1. And he fires this thing up and he goes, "Hey, I could get you Pac-Man." And that was the thing that would, like, of course, Pac-Man is only available in arcades. That's the only time you'd ever see this. But holy crap, this is in my house. I can play Pac-Man for free anytime I want. And I'm fairly certain that it was, like, close to what the Atari would have been, the Atari version, 2600, where it was like the lines. They weren't dots that Pac-Man was eating. They were lines. But, like, you didn't care because you had Pac-Man. Like, the things that you just kind of, like, you were okay with is just fascinating. The things that we complain about now are just so far, and this is where I get to sound like an old man, where it's like, back in my day, we didn't care about frames per second. Like, we didn't even care about, we cared about colors. We cared about, how many, do you have 16 colors, or are you talking about hundreds of colors?
People bitch about 4K, 60 frames a second, and we're like, dude, it's got 32
I had 4 colors. Yeah, 4K the K was for color.
HDR back before HDR happened was just how many colors you could have on your screen.
Yep.
Did you see the vivid colors? There's 32 of them.
There's a 15-inch monitor that was 25 inches deep. Like, the thing took up like it weighed like 37 pounds, actually probably even more than that. But that was probably the first like introduction. That was actually, it was a big event. My whole family was there. We had this like computer desk set up, and it was just huge, man. And the fan ran loud, and the printer was like that dot matrix thing with the tracks along the side, and we could print out documents. So that was the main reason that the computer came in, was this was for homework, this was for word processing. We had WordPerfect, the blue screen with the white blinking dot. Yep. Maybe some people might recognize or feel nostalgic for that. And I didn't even know what I wanted to write. I just knew that I wanted to be in like WordPerfect. So I was like, that was my first kind of introduction to games, I guess. Meanwhile, my neighbor, who, like, I don't have a memory of not knowing my neighbor Matt. We would have moved into that house when I was maybe a year and a half old, and apparently the story goes we slept over at their house like the night that my family moved in, like as my parents would have been moving in furniture and everything. We slept at, like, so we became best friends from the moment we met. Like, we were just exactly the same age, and his brother was the same age as my older brother, so it just kind of like really worked out. But his family was the one who had everything. He had the NES, Super Nintendo, he had Genesis, and he would do the funny thing of swearing off other consoles, and we'll get into this too, but he was such a Nintendo person that when like Game Gear came out, it's like, I'm definitely not getting Game Gear. And then it would show up for Christmas, and then you'd love the Game Gear and stuff. And PlayStation would come out, and we would make fun of the buttons, because like, who the heck wants to play with triangle and square and circle? Like, that's stupid.
A, B, and C, damn it. Learn your letters.
But holy crap, Symbols. Final Fantasy VII looks really great. So then PlayStation shows up and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of my console gaming was done at my neighbor's house. And we had like this gate in between. So we had a fence that divided our backyards, but there was a gate that we could just run from my backyard to his backyard. And we could time it so that he would call us, and then he would start a timer on his like Timex watch. Did you ever have like a Timex, yes, like an Iron Man? And it would be like 19 seconds for us to hang up the phone, put on our shoes, open up the back door, and then like sprint on over so that we could go play some Mario 3 or end up like spending a summer playing Mario Kart on Super Nintendo.
Dude, the funny thing too is, if you think about it, like, now I can't, like, that, of course back then people were way more trusting, and of course in Canada everybody's so goddamn nice, and like, I can't imagine me moving in here and then me going, sure Alex, stay the night at a neighbor's house. I have no idea if they murdered people or not, but go ahead, we'll figure out what happens if something terrible happens.
Yes, no, like, I know, dude, I think about that all the time, especially now with Lincoln. Like, I think I know my neighbors' names. Like,
you don't need to. There's apps for that. There is. I swear to God, there's an app for it. It's called Nextdoor. You know, it's sad, but, and yeah, just, and back then, like, I knew my neighbors. Mm-hmm. Like, you knew who your neighbors were, and you also knew the houses to stay away from. Like,
that's true.
My dad was like, you stay the fuck away from that house. You don't go near that house. I'm like, fair enough, Dad. Good point.
We had a house across the street. The lady still lives there. God, she doesn't age. This has been obviously 30 years. Same person.
She's a witch.
I don't believe that it's a house inside. I don't know how else to describe this, but I have like this weird, because this is a house that you stay away from. Right. Like, and it's kind of like it's not like regular suburbia where every house is exactly the same. Like back in the 90s, houses were built somewhat differently, but still very 90s, like still very identifiable. But this house, it's like dark brown. It doesn't have like great curb appeal, I would say. It's a big house.
Ruining property values for everybody. Thanks, guys.
Definitely. It's got like a lamppost right in the middle of its driveway. It's very strange. But I don't, when I picture walking through the big doors that it's got, like I picture like a dungeon. Like I picture just dark lights, like Castlevania, basically.
Like
you walk
Addams
in there.
Family.
Yeah, it's just candlelit. And there's just like medieval weapons laying on the floor. This is how I picture, and these are such childhood thoughts, but they've persisted in my brain. And even now, I was at my parents' house yesterday. I look over that house and I'm like, I don't believe that there's a real family that lives in there. I just think that this is like a training ground for Dracula and his minions.
It's a family of witches. They don't age. Dude, it's just, yeah. Like, but it's funny because, like you said, like how much gaming was influenced onto you because of how damn nice your neighbors were and how trusting your parents were to just be like, sure, kid, Go over there. I have
they
no
seem
idea
nice.
They are.
Totally.
They seem nice. Do they kill people? Probably not.
Not yet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
There's
pretty
a
much, that was good
75%
enough.
chance they don't kill people. But that 25 still lurking, it could grow eventually. No, yeah, like you said, though, now it's like, you don't need to know your neighbors because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
But it sucks too. Like I went on a trip, I went to Colorado. You remember I went to Colorado before I went, did the podcast with you.
Yep.
Or after.
After, yep.
And I went to do the podcast, or I went to Colorado, and my neighbor across the street saw me. He goes, "Oh, you guys leaving?" And my first thought was, "Why are you trying to rob me?" Terrible.
Yeah, mind your own business.
What the fuck you asking all these questions for, bro? No. But I was like, "Yeah, I'm going." And he's like, "You know what? I should probably have your phone number in case something happens." I'm like, "Yeah, that's probably a good idea." And we exchanged numbers. He's like, "I meant to do this probably a year ago, but it's really awkward." I'm like, "It is, but back then it wasn't. Like back then you would just go to neighbor's house. You would just, and there was no cell phones. Like we just trusted people more. Like I would go over, you know how you knew you were at your friend's house? Your bike was in their front yard. That's
right.
how you knew."
Oh man, that reminds me too, because we used to, and even now, like buses change, like school buses change now, where the bus driver requires the parent to be like waiting for the kid on the street so that they can be dropped off. Like back in my day, back when I was a kid, they they just dropped you off. And they like you barely got your second foot on the sidewalk before they're just like peeling off to get the rest of the kids home. Like they didn't care at all. And there was like maybe one or two times where, maybe even just once, to be honest, where my mom hadn't got home from like grocery shopping yet or something like that, and she was out, and the only option was going over to neighbor Matt's house, who he went to public school, I went to Catholic school, so he was home already, and he went to one that was a little closer. He didn't do the bus. So if my mom isn't home, that means I have to go over to neighbor Matt's house, and I can play video games over there. So
there you go.
My kid brain thinks every single time we're on the bus going home, I hope my mom isn't home. I hope to God that I have to go over to neighbor Matt's house, because that's where the games were. We had PC, but they had Nintendo. They had the Ninja Turtles game. They had Super Mario 3, man. Like they had this great little like black box, and you just like open it up and it would have like that light, like on Pulp Fiction when they open the briefcase. And it was just like this, like, oh my God, there was maybe 10 games in there. But that was, to me, that was all of the games. That was everything that you could imagine. So, dude, that's hilarious. It's because no cell phones, as you brought up. You couldn't call your mom. It was just, I can't get in the house, and it's minus 30 in July, so I better find some shelter.
That's right. Because you grew up in Canada, where it's, snowing in
Igloos
June.
don't melt. That's right.
Yeah. Like weather. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Illinois, and I mean, that's the other thing, too, is it's funny because, like, so many people, like, I guess it depends on what's going on, but, like, depending on where you live, like, wintertime was time to hunker down.
That's right.
And play the hell out of some games. Mm-hmm. And in summertime, you were going out doing stuff. Where I live in Arizona, it's the exact opposite.
Oh, yeah, you're getting the hell away from the sun.
Dude, if it's summertime, you're indoors doing anything.
Yeah.
Like, you don't care. You're like, I'll go to Target and walk around for an hour rather than wanting to be outside. Like, you don't want to, and I mean, again, but then now, like, it's actually starting to get awesome weather now. Like, right now, windows are open.
Right.
I'm going to bed with all my windows open. And
that's so weird.
Again, such a different climate, but, again, you guys are all, in December.
It's snowing today. It's not. It's snowing today. I'm not even lying. And this is not the first snowfall this year. Like, dude, it'll go away, like this isn't the forever snowfall yet, but it's this snowing.
It's snowing before Halloween. That only happened to me a couple times.
That's always the mark. That's always kind of like, are we going to have a good winter or a bad winter? And if it snows before, we're in for a rough year, I think. But we would always kind of like wait, because you don't want to, especially growing up, man, you don't want to have your Halloween costume and your snowsuit underneath it. Like, we were like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but like barely, we had like the bandana, but we had toque and mitts, and wait, you probably don't even call them toque. You don't even know what a toque is. Well, maybe you do. That's the warm hat.
Yes. That's a very Canadian thing, but I do know what it is.
What would you call that? Is it not a toque?
I would just call it like a hat. I don't know.
But I'm wearing a hat.
I'm wearing a hat. It's fine. I'm just wearing a hat. See, it's snowing there. And again, I know you're Celsius because Murica likes Fahrenheit. But it's going to be 94 degrees today.
Oh, my God. That's unbearable.
It's unbearable.
Dude, I couldn't, like, there's no sports happening at 94.
Do you understand when it's 94 outside? I'm like riding my bike, smiling ear to ear, like, this is wonderful.
I'm dying at that temperature, dude. Like, there's no way. Oh, 80 is like really nice.
And that's the difference
80,
out where I
85.
live now is that kids like in Arizona, like I'll tell my kids all the time, school's out, go play. And they're like, Dad, it's 120 outside. I'm like, you're right, never mind.
God, that's impossible. Do you live on Mars or something? Like, what the heck?
Nah.
Actually, is it warm on Mars? I don't know. I just feel like it's just dangerous there.
It's just super warm on Mars.
Mercury, maybe Venus.
But again, out here now, it's the exact opposite because like Christmas time, I'm out there shorts and a t-shirt tossing a football. Like, it's fun. And then everybody else is inside praying they live through the night because it's freezing outside. Like,
no, man.
Again,
no, even in the summer, though, like, even for us, like, I would still try to find excuses to, even in summer, because that was the time, that was your off of school. So whether or not, like, it's nice outside or not, like, it was either, it was super hot and we could do a water fight, or anything else. Like, if we weren't doing a water fight or a Nerf fight outside, we're inside playing something, playing Street Fighter 2 on Super Nintendo, or we probably spent like an entire summer playing Star Fox 64. Like, what did you have? 2 multiplayer maps and that's it?
Right.
Or Mario Kart 64 is like basically between those 2 games, we're flipping back and forth for every single day. Like, it wasn't even like there was nothing else to do. I don't know. Maybe it's different for people growing up elsewhere. But for us, you wake up at a certain time, you dial the number. Like, I still have neighbor Matt's phone number, like, right up here in my brain. Like, I could dial it for sure. It was just automatic. And you memorize, like, the tone and everything and how quickly you could dial it and stuff. And yeah, man, you just had, like, are you busy? Like, are you having to go, like, is your mom taking you to the library or something actually productive? If not, we're going to come on over. We're going to drink some Kool-Aid, eat some microwave popcorn, and play the crap out of GoldenEye, Star Fox 64, and Mario Kart, man. That was it. That was the dream.
Yeah, and I remember during summertime, I was always out doing stuff. Like, for the most part, I was doing some sort of outside activity, right? It was like basketball or skateboarding or something like that. But then at night, it was all night playing games. Like, we just saved it all for after the sun went down, and it was just like, oh, we got to go home now. All right, everybody, go to Gary's house and let's play fucking... Yeah, it's my buddy Gary. But yeah,
the way you describe it reminds me of like levels in like Mass Effect or other video games where you can't go in the sun. Like, you can hide in the shade and stuff, but if you like kind of peer out and touch the sun, then your shields go down, or like you start to take on damage. That's you in real life,
right?
Like,
exactly. Like, the sun's going down. Like, we got. Yeah, dude. Out here though, it's
you're pushing around like giant blocks just so that you cast a shadow. It just can't be at high noon or anything.
And what's crazy is it literally is 10 to 15 degrees cooler in the shade just because the sun out here.
That's space, man. 200 degrees in the sun, minus 200 in the shade. That was from Armageddon, which is my favorite movie, by the way.
What's funny is like, it's just so odd that out here, there's flat earthers out there, and you guys are retarded. I'm sorry. You guys are all stupid. Nobody believes that shit.
Yep.
I seriously believe the sun out here is different than the sun everywhere else in the world. It is so next level out here. It's odd because the sun will be out in other places, but when it's out here, like, it's so cold in the wintertime. It gets down to like 30 or 40 degrees Celsius, like 50 degrees. That sun comes out, it literally jumps up. Like,
wait a minute. What did you say? It goes down
not Celsius, sorry, Fahrenheit, sorry.
I'm like, how hot is it, dude?
No, like at night it gets down to like 60s Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's nice.
But again, like, when that sun comes up, it instantly jumps up to 80. Just like, sun's peaking over the horizon, 20 degrees hotter. It's just
like an on-off switch, man. That's
crazy.
It's weird.
So at least growing up though, you had kind of a friend who had everything. So you had a friend who had a selection of everything. So did you like ever get your own stuff to where he would come over to your house and play, or you just kind of went to his house for everything?
It was pretty much mostly at his house, but the best time, Mitch, was birthdays. So I had, as I mentioned, there was 4 kids. The only time that we were allowed to have a console in the house was for birthday parties. So, like, all the kids would come over, and, like, what else are we going to do? Everybody else has a Super Nintendo or an NES for their birthdays. Like, we would have to do that as well. So that was the one and only time that we would convince our parents, got to go over to, not even Blockbuster, but, like, the mom and pop shop, like, Ultimate Video down the street, and we would rent we would rent one of the consoles, and it would come in like this bulletproof case, this bulletproof briefcase, and that was just so exciting because we also at the time, dude, I've been like working since I was like 8 years old. I was basically delivering flyers from grade 3 on, and my parents would actually take half of every check and put it into like an education fund so that one day, 45 years in the future, forever in the future in my brain, I would have some money set aside for college. So there were these times where birthday parties were coming around, and I knew I would be delivering flyers, which would take me about an hour. And the faster I got that done, the faster I could get home to play the console for the first time since the last birthday. Right. And that like anxiety, it's not even an anxiety, it's just that excitement. It's almost like paralyzing. You know, when kids get so tunnel vision, they almost don't even like, they forget to eat or they forget to like do basic things. And
I still do that.
Yeah, I suppose actually.
We still do that. We play 10 hours of a game and you're like, what the hell have I done with the day? I haven't even eaten. Mm-hmm. What is going on? South
Park's coming out in a couple weeks and it'll be like, I'm not doing anything at work today. This is all I can. Actually, that does happen. Like when the Switch came or was revealed, I was just overtaken with conversations on the internet instead of like, maybe I should actually work. So
yeah, work or sleep or do something like eat, do something productive. Nah, we'll just talk about video games.
Right. Yes, exactly. I mean, I can get to work stuff tomorrow when all this stuff dies down. So rentals was kind of like the time that games kind of came into the house and birthday parties. So, and those were times where we would rent games that neighbor Matt didn't have. So I don't know if you remember UN Squadron on Super Nintendo. Nobody ever knows what the hell I'm talking about with that one.
Yeah, that one I don't.
UN Squadron is excellent. If you like do emulators or anything like that, if there's a way for you to get old games, UN Squadron by Capcom, it's like a side scroller, but you fly a plane and you earn money as you beat every level, and then you can upgrade your plane and buy new weapons. Dude, the game is spectacular. And the other game that we rented was like NCAA basketball on Super Nintendo. My brothers both played basketball, so this was a staple between that and NBA Jam. Those were the games that we played. And I just remember like that blue background. And like it's so, I don't know if you ever played it. It's really not that great. But it was a basketball game, and it kind of like swung the camera around depending on who had possession. It was kind of like a behind the back viewpoint instead of the TV style, broadcast camera style.
Right.
So yeah, birthday parties was pretty much it until I saved up enough money from my paper route. How do you say? Do you say route?
Yes, it's you're fine. Route. Just say it however you want. It doesn't matter. You're fine.
But I don't even like I don't think route sounds good. I think that sounds stupid.
I would say paper route. Like. It's just funny because, like, again, sometimes people say things a little different, dude. Yep. It's all right.
But I think root sounds really dumb.
We'll figure it out. If they can't, they'll Google it. They'll Google it, how you spell it.
When I was delivering flyers, that's what I was doing. I was a paper boy. I saved up enough money to buy a green Game Boy, and I bought first game. It was a green Game Boy, and then I got Donkey Kong Land. So I had like the green Game Boy and then the yellow cartridge, which matched our football team, of course. And actually, the hat that I'm wearing right now was green and yellow. So that was like probably the first time that I had something that I could like take into my bedroom and hide away from everybody else and try to play it in the dark, and then realize that there's no way in heck anybody's playing the Game Boy in the dark. You've got to attach all those like different modifications on top of it.
Right.
You had like a magnifying glass, and you had like a light and everything like that. All these different things. So you had like this Frankenstein's monster, even though like it was already heavy enough. I think I had like, would it have like four AA batteries in it?
Are you talking about the OG Game Boy or the color?
No, the OG, man. Like, so it was green, but it was still like just it was Nintendo's like
that lasted all of 12 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So
it felt like 12 minutes. I'm sure it was longer.
I had actually a pretty decent Game Boy collection. That was kind of like my version, which was always felt like I just had like the step below everybody else. On PC, you had crappy ports of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and on Game Boy, they had just like even like the Land series always felt like, especially Mario Land, like the first Mario Land was just a very, very tiny version of the original Super Mario Brothers. They eventually kind of figure out how to make those games better for the handheld, but you always had every game on the NES had a Game Boy version, and it just sucked relative. I'm sure people are going to identify games that were actually better on that. But Donkey Kong Land was a great example of that as well. Donkey Kong Land versus Country. I could barely see what the hell I was even doing on that thing. Like, it was incredible graphics, but almost like too detailed. I would really have to adjust the contrast. Wheel.
What's that?
Oh, man. Yeah,
that contrast.
That was it, man. Between Donkey Kong Land and Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, those are the ones, like, I should have been outside doing stuff, but I would try to beat Mario Land as much as possible.
I remember when Game Boy, I never had OG Game Boy, like my buddy Gary, and he had one and everything. Okay, apparently Addie had one too. No, she basically, I remember having an OG. I never had an OG Game Boy. They did, and then I got the Game Boy Color. I actually think I had the same one you did. I'm trying to remember, because I remember my grandma worked at Sam's Club, so we got the Sam's Club package just like you did. That had like that Pokemon and then like 90 accessories, which you only needed 3 of them.
Yep.
So yeah, like that was basically how that worked. But I remember hating car rides until I had that.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, my grandma's like, it's going to take us about an hour to get the hour and a half. Good. Take your time. I got batteries.
Some batteries.
Right? Yeah, I was going to say, I got batteries, right? Are we good? We're good. I don't have to worry about a damn thing. So then, did you actually stay in the same house, and did you actually grow up like next to him basically your whole, until you were out of your parents' house? So like, did they just kind of get all the new consoles, and you just kind of kept going to their house and playing stuff?
Yeah, man. Like, we grew up every generation together, like side by side. It was like from little toddlers. We graduated. We were potty trained at the same time, and then we were, in elementary. Everything was exactly the same all the way up through high school, and even like our parents were very similar in their mindsets of if you're going to college or university or whatever, you can stay here for free. And so we both did that. So well into the 2000s, like, we were still at home, still hanging. Like, it wasn't quite the same being, 18, 19, 20 years old, heading over to each other's house, like dialing the landline and stuff. Some things changed. But yeah, like, anytime, I remember when they were the first ones to introduce me to the 64 and like walked me through why that was so incredible. They had the demo units at Toys R Us, which I look at those things now and go, why is that? So why do they make such a big deal out of it? And then I think back to when I was a kid, that was playing it for the first time was such a huge deal. And it was more than the magazine that you get. Like, he always, my neighbor had Nintendo Power. I eventually got a subscription to PC Gamer because that's just the way things ended up going. Like, I still didn't really have a console. The first console that came into my house was Dreamcast, actually. And then shortly afterwards was Xbox. And that's because we could actually pay for these things on our own. You're like, you know what, Dad? You can't impose your laws on us now. We can go buy this thing and have this Dreamcast.
I don't need to wait till Christmas. I'm a man.
Pretty much. I'm a grown-up. Couldn't be further from the truth. Even to this day, couldn't be further from the truth. But yeah, so we were, what the hell was I even saying? Oh, so, Toys R Us. I remember both of them playing that for the very first time, and I don't know why this memory is so vivid for me, but the older brother had come home and he was walking me through. It's so amazing because you have the little thumbstick, and if you just gently push it forward, he walked, and if you push it all the way, he ran. And I feel like that was, especially because we weren't that old, now looking back, I'm like, that was a very astute kind of like observation that this child made, that this was an important feat in gaming. It was different than the D-pad of either go or stop. Like, you couldn't push a D-pad lightly. It was Mario would walk, and then he would have his full run and have his, like, the triple jumps and all the different moves that he had. This was just mind-blowing to us. So that's like, that was all thanks to my neighbor, man. I really had to kind of rely on that. Meanwhile, back at our house, PCs we were still upgrading from the 12 megahertz thing to turbo to 25. We eventually got, the Pentium 166 megahertz, which was just mind blowing.
I know.
It could run Warcraft and Command and Conquer. Like, strategy games were my jam. That's really what I was like born. It was my bread and butter, which of course also introduced to me from neighbor Matt. They also had much better PC always, and they introduced me to like walking me through. You select a little peon, and then he goes to harvest some lumber and some gold and stuff, and then you got these knights, and they do the fighting for you. And just acknowledging like the different classes was a very different type of game for me. Like that was different than you used even Donatello with his bow staff versus Leonardo, or like those are the only two Ninja Turtles that you'd use because Raph and Mike suck in games, even though Mike's the best. Clearly.
And that sucked, man, because everybody's like, man, Michelangelo's the best, and then you play him in games, you're like,
no,
not really, no.
I think he should have had he could have had like more health or something, or like told jokes or hit people with cowabunga, and it would just be like this word, like the automatic, like the word speech bubble that would pop out. Give him a little bit of range, man. Like, come on, help a brother out a little bit.
Right. You hit him with a word bubble. That's what his superpower was. He was like, and it's just a big word bubble that goes across. So.
Or like maybe like he has skateboard always. Maybe you could throw that at people. Like there was something they could have done to help Michelangelo out a little bit.
Yeah, he could have just chucked his skateboard. I've done that before at people. That's pissed me off, and it hurts. It hurts a lot.
Cowabunga to them.
Yeah, I just scream cowabunga, throw a skateboard, and they look at me like, the fuck is wrong with that guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
Channeling my inner Michelangelo.
Oh, even when those movies came out, I'm so freaking old. Like, you tell kids this now.
I'm so old.
I am, because I remember the Ninja Turtles movies being announced, and it was in the paper. Like, and people, like, kids would bring that article of the newspaper into school and be, like, pumped about it. And we'd all be talking about, is this finally when Krang was going to be in there? Or, like, Bebop and Rocksteady. But instead we got Toka and Razar. And who the hell is that? And, like, I mean, at least you got, what the hell is his name? The hockey player. He had the hockey mask.
Casey Jones?
Casey Jones. I had Johnny Cage in my mind, but obviously Mortal Kombat. Whatever. But the best is in that movie too. This is the Canadian connection where they see him like, who the heck is that? And they go, Wayne Gretzky on steroids?
Yes. And the whole crowd stood up and applauded.
Mm-hmm. All of Canada. It's just
all it was just stood up and was like, that's right.
Our golden boy is in the most popular kids movie ever now. Oh, God, these are such great memories, man.
You're going to explain this memory to your son, you're going to go in the paper, and then he's going to go, what's the newspaper?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man.
It's okay. We're old. It's fine. We can still be having fun memories, and that's what this whole show is about. Mm-hmm. Like, talking about all the good old times. Because, when my son hears some of these podcasts, if he ever does, which he's never going to, he's too busy into new shit, he's just going to be like, what are you guys even talking about? You guys had to, you guys didn't download games? You had to go to a store and buy them,
and it never seemed inconvenient. That's the best part, is that like you look forward to going to Blockbuster, you look forward to going to these weird stores. Like, we didn't really get Best Buy or even anything like it for quite a while. So even when I bought my Xbox, the original Xbox in whatever that was, 2000 or 2001, we went to the grocery store, man. They had the grocery store had a photo lab in it, and that's where all your electronics were. That's where I bought my Game Boy. I can't even remember where we got the Dreamcast from, but that's just it. But we ended up, there was a different store. Best Buy eventually bought this other store. It's called Future Shop. Right. And then it bought out Future Shop, and now it's just Best Buy. But that's where we got all of our PC stuff, dude. Like, I remember the time when we bought, I don't know if I've told you this story, where we finally got a Sound Blaster card where we could have music coming in. Like, for us, for the longest time, PC gaming was just the little beep bop sounds that like beep, boop, beep, beep. Told you that it was like starting up, where the same sound effects that it would like burp out at you for games. Right. But we were playing Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat with a keyboard, and all I wanted was just to hear Scorpion say, "Get over here." So we all three kids, all three boys anyways, we'd pitch all of our birthday money together, and all the money we were saving up with our paper route, delivering flyers. We got the Sound Blaster, dude. And we were so pumped about this thing that, like, finally, this is what we need. Like, in our brains, this is what gives us sound.
Right.
But we forgot about the thing that actually would, like, exert the speakers. We forgot to buy speakers. So we get there, and we've got, like, to the penny, we've got our money saved up. We buy, and of course, the clerk there is like, okay, so we're going to have to, like, get you speakers. And it was one of the first, no duh. Like, what an idiot. Like, how stupid am I that I didn't even think of this?
Right.
So we ended up borrowing some money from my parents. We got, like, these $15 speakers that we ended up paying them back a little bit later. Like, I don't even know if they were 15 or 20, but like the cheapest things. Yeah. But it didn't matter.
Well, that always sucked when you were a little kid when I remember PlayStation came out and 64 came out, those were the first consoles that started introducing the AV cables, like red, white, and yellow cables. Mm-hmm. And of course, being not didn't have a lot of money or whatever, we still had the TVs that had the old RF adapters. So that was always fun, like getting home and going, oh shit, Dad, Mom, I don't have this piece. I need to go get it. And they're like, oh, so we need to go back to the store and buy something that you don't have money saved up for. Okay. Or the memory
it's a tough
card.
Sell. Yeah, the memory card. Yeah, man.
Well, and again, memory cards? These games save it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the damn PlayStation doesn't have a burner in it to save the data on the disk. So I'm like,
it's such of course.
Of course I need this.
But
exactly. So, I mean, that's...
Did you ever do like the third-party memory cards? Like, because they're so much cheaper, but like...
Yeah, and then they fucking randomly just wipe shit. Yeah, I remember that.
Man. Yeah. That's no good.
I have a story. Shout out to Sony official memory cards. My buddies and I, they had a treehouse, like playhouse thing in their backyard that their dad built, right? Mm-hmm. We would run an extension cord that probably could have caught fire at any time from their inside of the house all the way out there. And then we would have a TV and a PlayStation and we hang out there in the summer times. And it was like our own like clubhouse and it was cool as shit. Somehow, out of nowhere, we lost a memory card. Like there's just a memory card that just disappeared. And we're searching, we're tearing the thing apart, couldn't find it, whatever. All of a sudden, I'm not kidding you, I want to say 7 years later, he's cleaning his backyard. He's like, they're doing all this stuff. Goes through this like mulch pile and found the memory card. Now, I don't know
nice.
I don't know how it got there, right? But it was an official Sony memory card. Mm-hmm. It had survived 7 winters. But
what's winter?
I'm sorry. American winners. I apologize.
Yeah.
We can't say Canada winners because that's next level.
I mean, it's still a feat, but let's be honest.
It survived. You look offended. You're like, sir, you didn't survive.
The 7 seasons of mild weather.
Right. Non-Canada winter. Exactly.
Just kidding.
But like it was when we got it. It was like grimy and gross. And then like we took the rubbing alcohol and the Q-tip. We cleaned the contacts out,
nice.
put it in, and that bitch had everything still. And I was like. Shout out to Sony memory cards, because a third-party memory card, you pull it out or look at it funny, and it's like, I'm going to erase your Final Fantasy VII data. I'm like, oh, thanks, third-party memory card. That was 3 times the size for half the price. What did I think I was going to get?
Oh, my gosh. No kidding. Oh, I love that. Like, playing, like, even wrestling games, you'd save all your characters to those cards. Like, it would have been nice to have maybe an internal memory that didn't really come until like the Xbox, the original Xbox, where like Microsoft would go, why wouldn't you have something with a hard drive in it? We've been working with hard drives forever.
Exactly.
And that was such a no-brainer. But yeah, man, I just have so many great memories, and I always picture myself, no matter what the console is, I kind of like imagine myself the same age. Like if I'm playing NES, I don't picture like the 5-year-old that was playing NES. I kind of picture basically like 9 playing NES, Super Nintendo, 64, and everything else. It's just always a child playing that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, even still, I think of, it's funny because you say that, because I kind of think that way too. I think like 12-year-old me playing everything. Everything. Like all the games, PlayStation, being in my friend's clubhouse, there's a lot of other stories about shit that went down at that clubhouse later when people were older, which not going to mention that, allegedly.
All right. Allegedly.
Mm-hmm. But no, like there's just so many crazy memories. And I think of me as like 12-year-old me playing. Of course, I wasn't 12 when I first played Mario 3. Yeah. But that's how I like remember. I don't remember little 6-year-old Mitch like,
I know,
I got
it's so
Mario.
Weird. I used to, because it was so ubiquitous, like everybody had an NES, especially like that was just, no matter where you went, it would pop up. And so for people who owned it, like it was special, but it wasn't like, oh my God, it didn't have that glow, right, that I was talking about before. Right. It was, it was like a VCR to them. Like everybody had a VCR, everybody had an NES. And whenever I went to another person's house and we would be sitting and chatting or whatever, I would be locked in tunnel vision on that NES going, when are we going to shut up and go over there and play this thing? Because like, I don't get to do this every single day. So I was almost even like more locked in because, it was still very much a part of my everyday life just because of, I was always with people with them, but it was even more enhanced because I didn't have it.
Right.
So I always wanted to just go run over and play it no matter what it was.
Yeah, you're right. Like NES was definitely the console that everyone and their mother had, literally. Like, like fucking grandmas had it. Like everybody had it. And then it just got to the point where it started getting like slower and slower and slower. And I think it popped up again with the Wii. Like everybody had a Wii. Like everybody had a Wii. It didn't matter. Everybody had a Wii. So that was always like now kids. That was like basically, I wouldn't say our kids' generation, but I mean that's basically what it is. Like 5-10 years ago or whatever. No. Has it been that long? It has, hasn't it?
There's a weird thing that happened between like 2000 and 2010 that like that decade kind of just disappeared for me. I don't know if it's the same as you.
Yeah.
Because
it's like, what the hell happened?
I think it was like NHL 14 came out and they're like, this is the 20th anniversary. I'm like, that math doesn't oh crap.
It kind of does.
Oh, those zeros, those are still like years that actually happened. Yep. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, I was going to say, but like I remember. Yeah, you always get super old when you're like, this is the 30th anniversary of Mega Man. You're like, or whatever. You're like, oh my God, what is wrong with me? Like, I am not that old, am I? No, we're that old. It's okay.
Yep. I realized it when I'm like, oh yeah, so when I talk to people about like the 90s, how much fun I had in the 90s, just remember how bored I got when my parents were talking about like the 70s. It was the same. Exactly. It's the same thing, and it's just like, oh.
Except for they were doing probably way more fun things in the 70s, but
probably like we were all just angry at ourselves. We were just like Nirvana and Offspring playing in the streets,
Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Sadness and Gray Skies
nobody understood what anybody was singing about. It was just like
exactly,
yeah.
Man, so
I remember wanting to do like the very first like Let's Plays. Like we used to do, allegedly, we used to daisy chain VCRs together.
Of course.
And we would have like, because if you had like the different modes, right? When you record on VHS, you could have like SP, which was like the best quality, but it was only, you get maybe 2 hours out of it.
Exactly.
Or you have like LP, which is like 6 hours and the crappiest quality you've ever seen.
Of course.
But you could get all 3 Star Wars movies onto one tape if you cut out the credits and you kind of like did a little trimming here and there,
a little editing.
But we wanted to do the same thing with games too. We wanted to hook those up, and now because I eventually learned how it all kind of worked, we could have done that. Like we really could have daisy chained like a Super Nintendo into the back of a VCR, and then from there just continue it on. I don't know why we didn't do that. We should have been recording gameplay and selling it on the internet, which didn't exist. Maybe that's why we didn't do it.
You saw it at flea markets, like how to beat Mario World.
But that's how like desperate we were for gaming back then too. Like I would have even like listened to neighbor Matt playing a game. And I remember Bobby Paul's telling me a similar story of like just listening to his cousins play. Like that's a thing that we did. I don't know if maybe there's just other things to do now, so you don't have to ever resort to anything like that. But
the internet has made the instant gratification. You can literally do anything anytime you want now. Like
that's true.
You could play anything you want now with the emulation, allegedly. You can get games the second they come out. Like there's just no waiting. There's so much other stuff to do thanks to the internet, but also too, that means our kids are going to grow up and have zero attention span. So.
Well, just like us. I mean, we were all raised on Sesame Street. It was like 90-second segments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're not really that much better. I definitely wait. What were we talking about? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's fine. What?
Little ADD just kind of like popping up here and there.
What's sad is that I actually had to think about it. I was like, wait, what were we talking about?
What the hell were we just saying? Exactly. So now we've got like a generation of ADD kids growing up, having their own kids, and just kind of like it just perpetuates.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. I'm not putting my kids on meds, though. I'll just tell them to knock it off. They're fine.
Yeah, sure.
They don't need meds.
Just a little brandy under the lower
or
jaw.
A little bit of sit down, stop playing games for a second, put your phone away. So the good thing, though, is that all of this gaming has led you in your life to a job where you actually do that. So for people that don't know the legendary Sean Capri, what is it that you do now?
Not legendary. So I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, hold on. Let me phrase that. On my Twitter sphere, on every podcast, Sean Capri.
Well, I get weird with compliments, so I'm just going to say thank you and try to push forward.
You're the bet. No, I'm just playing. Like I'm.
Well, for a job, I fundraise. Like for my living, I work for a cancer charity, and so I work in marketing and strategic fundraising and things like that. So, almost couldn't be further from gaming.
Okay,
but
let me phrase that. You're not. I shouldn't say the career because like you are on. you contribute to a website for reviews.
Right.
You do do a lot of podcasts and stuff. So, I mean, it may not be your main source of income or anything, but at least it is gotten to the point where it's not just, I just play games still. Like, at least you're contributing more to this, overall gaming society rather than just, I just play games.
It sort of comes out of this weird, I should probably do something to justify the fact that all I want to do or think about is video games. All I wanted to, like, writing for We the Nerdy came out of, almost like, it does come out of working full time. Because growing up with neighbor Matt, we would make videos all the time, we'd make movies. Like, there's backyard wrestling tapes, there's a James Bond, like, parody. We wrote a script for a Mission Impossible parody called Mission Fairly Difficult. And instead of Ethan Hunt, the character's name was Mike, and you can do the rest of the math yourself.
There you go.
So we were always building things, like we were always creating, and even for my birthdays, like growing up, 18, 19, 20 years old, we would do reality TV shows in the back, and we'd have drinking competitions and stuff. Like, there are DVDs that exist of 60 people in my parents' backyard with 5 kegs, and we would just make videos out of it. And we looked at the Grindhouse movies, the Quentin Tarantino and the Planet Terror, and that they had the fake trailers in between.
Right.
And we would make up our fake trailers. We had a horror movie called Cul-de-sac, There Is No Exit. And it would be put to the theme of Mass Effect. Like, it was hilarious, man. So we were always creating stuff. And that part will never go away for me. And I really want to kind of instill that creative, whatever it is. If Link wants to play music or draw or do videos or talk or whatever the heck it is, like, it just activates a different part of your brain that then helps being well-rounded, I think, is really what it's all about. And after doing writing and doing podcasting, I know that it has helped my professional career. Like, I know that I'm a better speaker now, that I can, if I need to kind of persuade somebody or present an idea, a fully fleshed out idea, I wasn't good at that before doing this. I needed to figure out a way to, like, not kind of trail off and, like, I think I can't remember what my point was. Doing this forces you to do that. So I wanted to write something about video games because I was very engaged with, like, E3, especially when there was big news that was happening, and I would have opinions about it. And I just started up a blog. It was about the same time I was getting into podcasts for the first time. I'm totally babbling now, but I'll bring this to a finite point at some point here. I was driving down to Calgary for work, listening to a podcast, and it was something that's popular here. I don't know if you ever watch, like, G4, but Reviews on the Run, EP Daily. And they were talking about, they get this question all the time, how do I get into the gaming industry? And they're just like, just do it.
Right.
Start writing about it. Same thing that Greg Miller kind of says, like, write about it every single day. And I took that advice as if, like, that podcast was recorded saying it directly to me. So my brain just started, like, you know what happens. Your brain starts getting, like, creative ideas, and it just starts going and going and going. It gets this real crazy momentum. And as I was driving down, I came up with, like, I wanted to do this blog called All in Fun and Games, and I would, like, buy the URL and I would start writing about it, and surely somebody would notice. And turns out that somebody actually did. Somebody in the UK found the blog, and they invited me to write for their site called 16-Bit Kings back then. And I was really interested in trying to dig through my backlog at the time. I wanted to go back to Dragon Age Origins and Red Dead Redemption. And at the time, Dishonored ended up being a little bit old. I think I was playing Batman Arkham Asylum and things like that. And writing about it from almost like a review, but retroactively, like from the perspective of somebody playing these games much, much later.
Right.
And that website was going really, really, really well. I really enjoyed it. And then it sort of came to, they wanted to transition to a new style website. So as that was happening, it just kept going on. And I'm like, I don't want to wait for this transition to happen. Found Andrew Semichek just talking about, I think it was another, like, kind of funny or maybe even Podcast Beyond thread where somebody was saying, I want to get into the games industry. How do I do it? And Andrew Semichek from We the Nerdy said, we're always looking for writers. And I kind of jumped in, even though it wasn't my post. I kind of said, like, I'm looking for a place to write. So he said, send me a couple of examples. So I had some work. And then, I mean, the rest is really history. We just kind of, I would do some features there, and then that turned into me reviewing games that I was buying for myself. And now I'm very, very fortunate that I've done enough reviews for games that I've paid for that every now and then I'll get tossed a code and I can do that. And from there, we started up We the Gamercast, where I joined We the Gamercast as a guest, actually, right after like a Nintendo Direct. And that was actually like within the first 10 episodes of We the Gamercast was a totally different format. It was like whoever Andrew could get together on the We the Nerdy staff to get together and talk.
Right.
And it was like breaking all the podcast rules. It was different hosts each and every time. It never came out the same day of the week. It would be like 3 weeks apart. It was all scattered. It was just awful. And as a newcomer, I'm like, I don't think this is right, but I don't really have the place to say you guys should be doing something else. And eventually they kind of dropped and I jumped in and said, I've got this idea. Mark Maron does this show where he just talks at the beginning. He introduces a new guest. And that, I felt like at the time, it really matched up with our inability to get people to commit each and every week. Right. I wanted to do a podcast. I thought of something that was slightly different, even though it was copying somebody else's format. And the rest is like, it just is amazing from there, meeting all these people, reviewing games, talking about games each and every week. And yeah, it doesn't pay anything. Like, it doesn't, like, the We the Nerdy doesn't pay anything. But man, when I get a Forza code, I am thrilled, dude. Like, It's just like, even if that's the one that you get all year is crazy. When you see an embargo email for the first time, like, oh, I've made it. Like, even though
like, I got it.
Not really.
Like, that's I mean, and the thing is too, is it's funny because like you actually kind of did the same thing where I was talking about, wanting to do a podcast and everything. And then you kind of jumped in and was like, hey, I'm always looking for guests. You want to be on the show? Just send me a message. And that's exactly how all of this started. Like,
it's so encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, it's like, dude, be on my show. And then as soon as I was on, and I remember the first time I was on after we were done recording and I told you that was my first podcast and you were like, you're a fucking liar. Yep. You were like, I don't believe that for a second. It was super encouraging. And that's exactly where, again, it's funny. You kind of did the idea from Mark Barron and I just stole the idea from you. So somehow in the relationship I stole from Mark Maron, but whatever.
That's right.
I'm sure a bunch of people did. But like, yeah, I mean, and again, for me, it was more interesting just, the hard thing, like you said, getting the same guests on each week, especially when all my friends have families and wives and lives and they have their own shit to do. And I get it.
And 9 to 5s.
9 to 5s. And after that, spending time with the wife and her family. And you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much shit going on. So I get it. But yeah, like, it's also interesting for me, especially with people that grew up in different areas. You know what I mean? Like, hearing different stories and stuff. That's like the whole reason why I wanted to do the show, because I don't know how it was growing up in Australia. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know these things. I don't even know, like, in Canada, shit was different because you apparently would move in and just be best friends with your neighbors in 5 seconds. So
that's right.
I didn't know that either. So, I mean, again, that's why I do the show. And, like I said, I was super happy to get you on too, because you were the one who kind of was like, hey, you're not terrible at this. You should probably do one. So,
yeah, man. And you obviously, like, not only are you good at it, but you obviously have the passion too. Like, it's kind of like this mix. And even some of it just comes after time. I think that if the passion is there, then you eventually learn either how to be a good podcaster or learn how to make things interesting that otherwise, or maybe some people would struggle to make interesting. So it has to be all of those things. There's so many podcasts out there that, you can't just love it. Like, you kind of have to go a little beyond. And I definitely, like, you were already there before you started. So right. I'm excited to see where this thing goes, man. Like, you're still, this is episode like 26 or something like that.
Yeah. See, look, you know, aw.
I mean, come on.
You paid attention.
So that's just it. That's the thing, man. Like, it's funny to think back of memories of playing video games, but it's also funny to think back of memories doing this show, going from episode, 15 to 25 to, like, we just celebrated episode 100 I just recorded episode 108. And there's a long time where it's just nothing. There's nothing happening, and it's the same thing happening all the time. And all you're stuck with is the frustrations of editing and getting things up. And would I rather be playing games than doing this? And there's a lot of, like, especially when you do it on your own, there's a lot of internal dialogue that you have with yourself. And that's why I always encourage, like, just push through it. And if there's anything that Dave Moore actually gave me very good advice, because I've hit some points in the road where I'm like, I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over again, or I feel like I'm not growing the show. And it wasn't from a numbers thing. I just felt like I wasn't either getting better, or I didn't want to be asking the same questions over and over. And it's going to be different what people struggle with at different times. And he was just like, just do like maybe do a stream or something, like do something else to kind of tap into a different part of your brain that activates it. And it was like it was the best advice. Like even if you do guesting on a different podcast, doing something else makes your mainline thing better. Like similar with my career, like I feel like doing this is sort of like a side project, makes what I'm making a living makes me better at that as well. So I don't know, man, like, 20 episodes, 26, there's definitely like, it's a roller coaster ride. So I hope things are going very, very well for you. Obviously you don't go into it with the intros and stuff. You basically just get to the guests. But I hope this has been a great ride for you, and I hope that it continues for you.
It definitely has. And like I said, I mean, it's, there are times where I'm just like looking like, man, this is really rough. But then like there's, it's really nice when I'll do an episode and then I get like a simple comment like, dude, yep, that was awesome. And like one dude, no idea who he is, no idea where he lives, just some random guy on a Facebook group or something was like, hey dude, that episode was awesome. Or, one of the guys that I used to work with at Best Buy, he heard an episode and then on my Facebook group went on there and goes, dude, I started playing Ninja Gaiden again because I like heard the episode of you talking about it. And I'm like, dude, that's so what it's awesome. About, like man. That made me feel great. So, yep. And again, like, do I expect anything to happen from this? No. Like, I don't expect to make money from it, but I mean, just doing something creative is really just something, like you said, I want to do video editing, I want to do all this stuff, but then like just doing this with something else. So that's all I can ask for. And again, if you just
never know what happens.
Exactly.
But it's that you do it because you love it and because like you just have that passion. You don't do it to be known. You don't do it to like do any of these things, but maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But ultimately, if you're having fun doing it, it's like, it doesn't matter, man.
Right.
Like none of us are talking about major cash. So just get that out of your brain.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? And just like, just have fun doing
that.
it.
And yeah, and like I used to get hung
you
up.
meet so many people all the time, every week, man. You meet somebody new, and you just never know. Like I was very lucky. I met Bobby very early. Like he just kind of showed up because he knew somebody else who was on the show. And that changed everything. Like meeting the Geek Guru like that, and he's on his path of just domination or whatever you want. Like he's so focused and he wants to create so much content. And I don't know necessarily if that's the exact same path for you or for anybody else, but for me, that's definitely definitely helped. Was him and I became besties right away, man. It was pretty sweet.
Awesome. Well, if everybody wants to check out your work, and like the 700 podcast you're on, I'm just kidding. So you're on We the Gamercast. You were on If We Ran Nintendo.
Right.
You were on the Xbox Drive.
That's right.
Is that all of them?
That is all.
Okay, just making sure. I think I get hung up too because sometimes you're guests on other ones, or I hear you talking about it on Twitter, other gaming podcasts and stuff. So I keep thinking like, which ones does he do? And then of course you write for WeTheNerdy.com. So I will have links to all of it in the show notes as well.
Thanks, man.
So everybody can check it out. Dude, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I was super happy to get you on. And
I was so looking forward to it, man. I'm glad that we had some things to talk about. I'm like, I didn't even know him stuff, but it's fun to go down memory lane. This is an awesome idea.
Thanks, man. And like I said, I appreciate you being on the show, dude.
Thank you.
All right. And again, thank you so much, Sean, for being on the show. In all honesty, without me being on his show, without him saying the things he said when I was on his show and kind of inspiring me to do it, I most likely wouldn't be doing the show I am right now. So I owe a big debt to him and getting me doing something more creative and everything, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while. So again, thank you so much, Sean, for being on the show. Again, I'll have links in the show notes for all of his stuff. I mean, he's got 3 podcasts that he's on pretty regularly. He has a website that he contributes to and everything for reviews. So definitely give him a look up and see all the other stuff he does. And he's the same way. If you guys want to be on an episode of his show, go ahead and send him a tweet, and he'll be glad to have you as a guest on his show as well. If you guys want to be on this show, go ahead and send me a tweet at GUG Podcast on Twitter or at my personal Twitter, which is MitchPower1116. Again, thank you guys so much for listening each and every week, returning to the show every Tuesday. Remember, give the show a share with a friend, a like on the social medias or the Facebook group, which there is a Facebook group, Growing Up Gaming Facebook group. Go there and share your thoughts as well. Again, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Again, I could keep saying the same things over and over, but I do appreciate everybody who is listening each and every week. You guys are the best, and I'll definitely be back next week with another show. See you guys.